Well, let me just say, settle down, people. We got people in the chat room already freaking out. We're a couple minutes late. Sometimes duty calls, and it takes a minute for us to get started, but we're at it right now. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, NFL Network. Eric Eager, Super Sports. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Back at it here as free agency. The big wave has made its way through. We will talk about what's going on. Chris Jones' contract in the mix. Hollywood Brown as a chief. Differing reports out there about what's going on with L'Jarius Sneed. Is he or is he not going to get traded? What does that mean? We'll get into Willie Gay only getting a one-year deal. Who's the biggest threat now for the Kansas City Chiefs? What do we think about how the free agent process is going? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. Good evening. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can catch us live. We are live streaming Tuesdays at 8. Most Tuesdays I was out of town, so we were not live last week, but as I understand it, Eric Eager, you were live in the chat room. Do I have that right?
I did. I came in. It was funny. Usually I sit in this chair, hang out with two of my best friends, and I chop it up Chiefs. I was sitting in this chair last week, and I was just chopping it up in the chat room with some of these new friends. Brad, said I was chopping it up with everybody. It was a great time. I had a good time. We had a lot of concurrent viewers, and I gotta say, we did a great job on the podcast.
That's right.
In hindsight,
yeah. So you were watching yourself talk about it and then commenting on yourself as you were talking.
Well, I was a little apprehensive because there was Chiefs news that happened last week, and so I was like, crap, the Sneed. Well, it was the Chris Jones thing that was really the thing. And so I was like, okay, let me get in here and talk to the fans that are the best in the world, of course. And it was fun, and we covered a lot of ground.
I had the thought, let's try and pull an unplanned podcast on the planned time. The internet where I was not going to make it happen.
No, but you like. I went in and I said like that. What I said was Petro has earned a vacation. That's why we taped. That is what I said. And I'm like, if you guys want to ask some questions, let's do them. Like I wasn't working. I was having fun. I don't work during this podcast, as you guys know. I have fun chopping it up with you guys. So it was no sweat off my back. It was a good time. And the crowd was great. Tommy Moe wanted none of the smoke, though, I will say.
Well, Tommy Moe's shockingly always got an opinion, so I wouldn't get too worked up about that when it's all said and done. Let's start, though, tonight with the L'Jarius Sneed. Let's go with the latest now. This is becoming kind of a whizzing match, a bone amongst insiders as to whether or not L'Jarius Sneed was almost a Colt, almost a Titan, or hasn't come close to getting anywhere. I don't know, Eric, you want to take first shot at that as to how you interpret where we sit right now with L'Jarius Sneed, still a Chief, still with the franchise tag?
Yeah, I think have we learned that draft capital carries a lot of weight in the NFL? I mean, we learned that today with Jerry Jeudy's contract. We learned that, and it's weird to say this because Jeudy was actually drafted after where Justin Fields was drafted, but Justin Fields was drafted as the fourth quarterback in his own draft. But like Justin Fields didn't go for that much. He went actually for a lot less than like Sam Darnold went for when he was traded after failing. L'Jarius Sneed is a 4th round pick. He has injury history. Like, he's a phenomenal Chief. In fact, he's going to be remembered, I think, very fondly in Kansas City. He might even stay in Kansas City after what we've seen here. But the idea that he's going to go for a first rounder is probably over. The fact he might not even go for a second rounder at this point if he goes at all. And I think that the Chiefs are probably thinking about extending him at a number that's lower than maybe the franchise tag at this point, given what the tepid response to him in the marketplace.
Let me ask you this, Jeff. Do we think that this is my perception? You tell me if you agree. L'Jarius Sneed's asking for a lot of money. No one's going to give up a premium draft pick and give up the kind of money he's asking for. The reports are he wants to be the highest paid corner in football. Should he be?
It depends on who's paying. Look, there's a lot of money to be had out there, and he wouldn't be the first free agent who got overpaid in the market. But yeah, part of this is, Eric said, part of this is the money aspect of it. Actually, let me go back. There's a lot of different factors that play into this trade working out. One is the money, the compensation. 2 is the draft capital given up for him. And 3 is him deciding he wants to do it. And 4 is the Chiefs deciding they want to do it. So you got 4 different things that are competing with each other there. And what usually happens when these kind of situations come up, when players are allowed to go out and find their own deals, is there's a lot of rumors being spread, a lot of whispering. These teams are interested and so wants them. And I always look at it like you're going to get a lot more of an overblown perspective on who wants him and who's really in on this. I know people in Indianapolis who I talked to today before we came on the air to talk about this. And the first thing I heard was, love the player, don't believe everything you read, don't know how these things get started. So all the talk about the Colts, somebody had reported they were actually on the verge of signing a deal with him. It's not real. Meanwhile, people in the Vikings, they're like, we've done our work on him, but we don't think we're in the league to get him. And so that's at least one team that actually is admitting to being in the process. So I do think people are out there. I do think if it's going to happen, it will happen closer to the draft, as most of these things do happen in that way. But it is, I don't think he's back in Kansas City for a number of reasons. The biggest thing is he wants a long-term deal, and the numbers that they would want to talk to him about, if they want to do it at all, would not work with what he wants right now.
I get the idea. A lot of times these things do happen on draft day, but they're usually for players that are already 2 or 3 years into a deal and come with less bite on the cap, right? You're going to have to take the full bite of the apple with L'Jarius Sneed. Now, you can backload it and bring this year's number down. So the idea that, everyone's spent all their cap room money. Well, I mean, if you're going to backload the deal, which most teams do, then, you're going to bring that number down to where there are plenty of teams that could probably fit him. So I do get that, but it's the whole bite of the apple, right? And the Chiefs aren't asking for a 6th. Jerry Jeudy, what was it, 5th and 6th for Jerry Jeudy? We're talking about to be more than the compensation, what you'd usually get. Do you get compensation if he walks after 4? Or do you have to let him, does he have to be there for 5?
I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
That's
if he walks after 4, you get if he walks, you get a comp pick, right?
I had somebody.
Maybe. I mean, if the comp pick situation works out, but you have to, and the Chiefs are a team that sign free agents, right? So it has to be. You have to win the comp pick formula, and then you'll get a comp pick.
Right. And if they're not, so that whole part of the process, I think it changes the calculus on, to use one of Eric's big words, changes the calculus on, what you look at. It's not just getting the picks, it's balancing out what you've given away. So I think he still could go, but I think for L'Jarius Sneed to have gotten the best deal, he probably needed to take what was the best offer in the first couple of days of free agency. I don't know that his best offer will still be out there. And I think we start to get a sense that maybe there's a little bit of this Chris Jones, like, yes, I want a big offer, but I also want it to stay in Kansas City. And I don't know that jives, especially after they did the deal with Chris Jones.
Yeah, that's what really muddles the waters for L'Jarius Sneed now, because the numbers don't make sense down the road if you're trying to do let's play the long-term deal in Kansas City idea out. Like, that means now you're talking about Creed Humphrey or Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie or George Karlaftis. There's people down the road that you have to be thinking about extending that you really can't be messing with. One factor in this that I think is underrated is the Jalen Johnson contract in Chicago, which was $19 million a year on average salary. And so I think L'Jarius Sneed has a pretty good claim to say I'm a better player than Jalen Johnson. So yeah, I think that puts him into the $20 million a year category. But again, it's like there's his age, there's the knee, there's the fact that, again, their salary cap with the Chiefs is super tight now because of that franchise number. And at some point, they got to do a deal.
And they're bottom third in the NFL in salary cap space next year with Sneed off the books, boys. Like, that's the other part. Like, that's not trivial. And that's with the cap going up significantly this year and next year projected, right? So, that, and Jeff makes a great point. Then you got, and these are the folks on Chiefs Twitter I'm arguing with. Then which one is it? Is it Creed or is it Trey or is it both that you don't get to hang on to? Is it Nick Bolton? Those are three guys you drafted in 2021. You like all of those guys. You get to keep one of them if you keep Sneed at most. So buckle up, right? And that's another one of those. That's another one of those things. And yeah, and that's all the part of the Chris Jones thing too. And we like, we like Chris Jones. We like the contract. He's going to be in Kansas City for life. But now it causes the tough choices.
I'll point out too, the Chiefs don't like to go into the draft needing to find a starter. And they've done a great job of getting Tranquil in place, putting depth on the defensive line. When we talked live last, that D tackle was a gaping hole. There was nothing. They've now put three guys in there. Three guys are back, right? Chris Jones being the headliner of that crew. But they've got a little bit more depth in there. Tranquil fills out the linebacking core. They've added Hollywood Brown. We'll get to his contract here in a minute. That and Irv Smith, the tight end there. The depth seems to be there everywhere but left tackle. Left tackle is still a big hole. Now, it's a good draft. As we talked about on Too Deep with Bucky Brooks, there's lots of tackles to choose from. The Chiefs should be in a spot, but they don't need to be mortgaging all their picks to just get one guy, because as Eric just pointed out, they're going to be really expensive next year. Guys are going to have to go. They're going to have to replace them with cheap players. They need more picks, not less picks. And so I think they'd probably like to sign one of the veteran left tackles as well.
Well, and what if Karlaftis gets 12.5 sacks this year? He's up for a contract this year, right? Like, and he's been freaking good, and he's a first-round pick. Well, but he can at least he can hold out after 3 years.
Yeah, he can talk extension officially then, but I'm saying they would still have 2 more years control.
Sure, but he can hold out, and he can start to make things uncomfortable for the Chiefs. Amena, who's a free agent after this year, like guys who, if Felix Anazuke-Uzama doesn't actually emerge, then that's a problem, right? They have some actual. I mean, we all love it. Again, I like Chris Jones is phenomenal. He's a Hall of Famer, but like, it makes things tighter. They got to make choices. And this is part of the reason, folks, why I said, you might want to think about trading a guy like Trey Smith or somebody like that to open things up a little bit and make some of these decisions ahead of time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It makes perfect sense. Let's close the Sneed conversation with this. What ultimately happens? Like, I think teams don't usually pull the tag. That's kind of considered dirty pool when you hold a guy away from being a free agent when he's out there, when all the money's out there, and then say, okay, now go get a deal after most of it's been spent, right? I don't think they want to do that. But do they get to a spot if they can't trade him that cap-wise, that's the only thing they can do?
I think that's the option. I think trade is the only real option that makes sense for them. as they move forward with this. Now, when that happens, I don't know. And as Eric pointed out, there's been other teams that have had to look at the situation, namely Chicago with Justin Fields, and be realistic about, hey, what can we really do here? Like, it's sometimes the market dictates what you have to do. And look, the good thing for the Chiefs is they prepared for this moment, right? They have other options at corner. And so now the Chris Jones signing, we'll get into that in a second, but the Chris Jones signing does indicate that they're all in for the idea of this three-peat. But I just don't know how L'Jarius Sneed fits now with the way things are. And if you can get something for him, you take it, you move him forward, you do right by him. And he's going to have to accept that his deal going forward might not be what he wants it to be.
That's the key. It's not all in the Chiefs' hands.
Yep.
It's not just make a deal. They got to get a contract done with Sneed and his people first. Eric, last thought?
Yeah, I think that, they got to get a deal done that works for all parties, that structures well for them. And, most importantly, this is a team that they value pedigree immensely, both in the free agents that they sign and in the ones that they keep. And, they're going to keep a guy like Trent McDuffie before they keep a guy like L'Jarius Sneed. And so if you keep a guy like L'Jarius Sneed, what does that do to your future plans on McDuffie? Again, because after I talked about Carl Optis, but what if McDuffie gets another first team All-Pro? And now all of a sudden next year you're in year 3 with him and he's coming up and he's saying, you paid L'Jarius Sneed, but I'm the best corner on this team. And, there are all these things, right? And the Chiefs normally get out ahead of this, right? They pay the second best, the third best linebacker, Drew Tranquil, and let Willie Gay go. Like, they do these smart things and keep this kind of stuff from happening. And this is one where a trade would have really been nice to have. But once you already kind of stick your butt out there a little bit, everybody kind of knows now. You don't want everybody kind of, and the other part about the Chiefs, and we saw it with Deontay Johnson. No one wants to play games with the Chiefs right now because they're the 3-time in the last 5 years Super Bowl champion. No one's going to give them a deal because Brett Veach is on an absolute heater right now, and no one wants to deal cards to him.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gain Asphalt and Concrete is nationally recognized. They're a full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear since 1994. Happy 30th anniversary, Gan. Don't risk accidents in your lot. Don't let liability be an issue. You can get it restriped. You can get it fixed with all the bumpers, signage, everything you need. One contractor, all things parking lot. It's Gan Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online right now at ganasphalt.com. Let's talk about Hollywood Brown coming to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeff, you like this fit? You like the contract?
I like the fit. I like the contract. He obviously fills a huge gaping need in their offense. As far as a deep threat, he's proven to be a more reliable player than Marquez Valdez-Scantling was throughout the course of his career before MVS showed up here. There's an injury history there. He didn't really blow it up in Arizona as people thought he would with Kyler Murray playing with his old college quarterback. But he's a guy I think he's underrated. Probably as a route runner, he can do more things underneath. It's kind of weird for a guy who's supposed to be lauded for his speed. I think his average per catch is something like 11 yards or something like that. He hadn't really been that kind of guy in the NFL, but he's a more reliable player. The only thing I would say that gives me pause about him was that it's kind of wild that his market wasn't bigger. I thought he would be certainly up in the realm of like a Calvin Ridley, but a tier below that, or certainly Gabe Davis got 3 for 39. Darnell Mooney got that. Curtis Samuel got 3 for 30. This guy can't get anything. So it does make me wonder why he was so cheap in the end.
I think, listen, I think he didn't like what he was being offered. And I think it became, you tell me, Eric, if you view it the same way, looks like to me like he wanted a bigger deal. He wasn't getting the kind of deal he wanted. So he's like, okay, I'll go play with an offensive genius. I'll go play with the best quarterback on a 1-year prove-it deal. I believe it's $3.5 million is the actual deal, but with very achievable incentives.
Up to
5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, 500, 750, 1,000 yards. That could take it up to $11 million. I mean, when you think they gave 3 years, $30 million to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Marquise Brown is a more accomplished receiver. It just speaks to how the market is changing at all times because they bought at the highest high on MVS. And this seems to be, they're getting a sweet winner's kiss for being able to land Marquise Brown for this. Or there's something off the field. And I talked to people in Baltimore. I didn't talk to anybody in Arizona. Everybody in Baltimore said, good teammate, fine in the clubhouse, not a problem. I said, when I heard Marquise Brown signed, Eric, I thought, okay, 3 years, 4 years. Yeah. Let's see what this deal was. When I heard one for up to 11, I was really surprised and went, wait a minute, what's wrong with this guy? People in Baltimore say nothing.
Yeah, Quinn has a good comment there. He brings out Juju. Like Juju, when you look at yards per route run is a really good kind of statistic for NFL wide receivers. Anything above like 1.75 is really good. Anything above 2 is amazing. Anything below about 1.5 is pretty bad. He was at 1.83, 1.85 his first 2 years, 1.61 in a 1,000-yard season in 2021, 1.44 in 2022. Now that was an injured Lamar and some Tyler Huntley. And then last year with bad quarterback play, it was 1.25. Average depth of target, 12.7. So it's not Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You're talking about kind of a more of an intermediate guy. Only 3 drops, but this is one that's interesting to me. He had 21 contested catches last year. So 21 contested targets, and only 5 of them he came down with. 23.8%. In his career, it's more like 41.6%. So I do wonder if there are just worries about either the trajectory there. With MVS, the trajectory was in 2020, he was at his best, right? And then in 2021, he had a little bit of an injury. And the Chiefs, to your point, with buying at the apex. With Juju Smith-Schuster, you're talking about a 1,400-yard receiver in 2018, 2019-20, you're talking about injured guy. 21, he spurned the Chiefs. 22, he came on a very similar deal to Marquise Brown. Came here, was very useful. Left was almost nothing with the Patriots. I make it more akin to the Juju deal, obviously, and I think he'll be useful for the Chiefs. And I think that they'll find a way, assuming he can stay healthy. I think he'll find a way to be pretty good for this team. I think the value is really good, but I do think that the league views him as kind of a plateaued player in some ways, because early on was when we saw his best efficiency statistics. And when he changed schemes and teams, it didn't get better. And we know that there was some injury, of course, to Murray, and there was a coaching change in Arizona. But, you got to be part of the solution in places. And, Justin Jefferson and Addison and those guys did pretty good with Josh Dobbs. Marquise Brown didn't, right? And so there's an element there.
I think there's a difference between, I think saying he plateaued, I'm fine with that. I won't argue that point. But I think there's a difference between plateauing and having no more ceiling. And I think when you've played with Lamar Jackson growing as a quarterback, right? Early on, more runner than passer. And then you played with what he played with in Arizona. MVS had played with Aaron Rodgers, right? He played with Matt LaFleur.
He made 3 straight MVPs out of quarterback.
Yes, and so you're getting, Jesus, you're getting. I caught that, by the way. You're getting a guy who is getting his first shot with a great play caller, a great play designer, and a great quarterback. So I think there's a lot of reason to believe that he may have one of those years. And Juju is probably the contract, unless the Chiefs really want to pay him. But see our previous point about where the cap is. This is probably just another 1-year deal. If they're going to have a long-term answer at wideout, it's still probably going to, along with Rice.
Probably draft a wide receiver, right?
Yes, and then you have to draft it still. Yeah. Because if he's great, he'll get offered something more than the Chiefs can match.
Yeah. But that's always been you look at the Patriot way, right? And I know that we're not trying to compare this team to the Patriots at every turn, but Brandon Cook spent 1 year in New England. Dante Stallworth spent 1 year in New England. You think about over and over and over again, they traded Deion Branch after he won Super Bowl MVP. This was that, and I think about other positions. Darrelle Revis spent 1 year in New England, et cetera, et cetera. This is a stop. This is a come for 1 year, win a ring type of place now. And I think the Chiefs are more than willing to oblige in a lot of situations. This is a very, this is this is a perfect situation for Hollywood Brown, and in some ways a perfect situation for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wonder about, the only caveat that I have in that, and the Juju's story here was different, right? Because they didn't have Rashee Rice. So when he stepped in, he was the most accomplished receiver. Marquise Brown might not get the kind of production that he's looking for to go get paid on the open market, because the guys who've left here, who weren't named Tyreek Hill, who've left here looking for big money, didn't find that. And so I am curious to see how he fits in terms of targets, if they go back to a more traditional way of throwing the football around and spreading it around to different people. If the rookie, they're going to draft somebody, we have to assume that, right? But if a rookie comes in and performs like Rashee Rice performed, it's not hard to believe he could end up with like 40 catches here and looking to be a one-year player someplace else.
And is that the worst thing in the world? Like if Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 40 catches for the Chiefs this year, I don't think any of us, like when he had 40-ish catches last year, most of us were like, yeah, that wasn't all that great. But he wasn't like the abomination that he was this year for, with 20 catches. Yeah. I think most of us were like, yeah, okay. If Rashee Rice is a 1,300-yard receiver and Hollywood Brown, like no one really, I think, Chiefs fans aren't like they don't care about Hollywood Brown fantasy football. They just cares about his contribution to winning. Yeah. And I think
he cares about it.
He certainly does.
Yeah. So he's got a vested interest in this being a big year for him.
Well, and he's also got, I think is it $250,000 in game bonuses? Mm-hmm. It's getting like $17K a game because games played 14, 16, 16, 12, 14. So not awful, but still missing some games there and some missed starts and things like that. So, So at the end, what makes this a good deal? What kind of numbers? Obviously, it's about winning a championship, but what kind of numbers, Jeff, in your mind, make this a good deal for the Chiefs?
Well, again, I don't think he's got to put up great numbers here. I don't think he's going to put up great numbers here. I think if he's a 700, 800-yard receiver, somewhere in that realm, and he's a 15-yard per catch guy, if he's not dropping balls, if he's reliable, and they win another championship, I think that's what it is. I don't think he's what's going to put them over the top. This team is always going to be about Chris Jones playing at a high level, Travis Kelce playing at a high level, Patrick Mahomes playing at a high level. Those three things have to happen, but I think he's a nice piece to the puzzle.
Okay. What makes it a success, Eric?
Yeah, 50 or more catches, 750 or more yards, a few, handful of touchdowns. If Sky Moore, if none of the other receivers do anything and or Rashee Rice gets hurt, then he's got to be 1,000-yard receiver, right? Like that to me is the big thing. But if everybody and if Travis has another year like last year where he declines a little bit, then he's insurance for all those other things. Yeah. I don't think you go into the year saying in the perfect world, Hollywood Brown's got to be 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think so. I think in a perfect world, he's a 750-yard receiver and he's insurance in case things aren't perfect.
Yeah. And we'll see if Andy Reid can make him look like Deshaun Jackson, because I think that's probably the player he thinks he is in his head. We'll see if he can do it. Real quick, I want to get Irv Smith in this conversation. A first-round pick coming out of Alabama after he averaged 16 yards a catch from the tight end position. 44 for 710 and 7 was his last year at Alabama. In the NFL, 36 for 311 and 2, 30 for 365 and 5, 25 for 182 and 2. Last year, 18 catches, 115 and 1, 6.4 yards per catches. What did they get in Irv Smith?
About the same. About the same. I'm not really super excited about the pickup. He's depth for Kelce, and part of me feels like we get to Chris Jones. I think we'll get into this as well. I think there's a pretty good chance in my mind that they probably suspect Kelce may not play beyond this year. That'd be my guess. And so I think they're probably looking, let's start getting bodies in here, some veterans. Let's make one more great run with Chris Jones in the mix. But I think he's there to be a stopgap in case something happens to Kelce. Kelce was banged up a lot of the year. So they need somebody who they can trust. But I don't expect him to come in here and be anything more than what a backup tight end. I don't think he's going to be better than Noah Gray, for example.
Is he going to be better than Blake Bell?
Yeah, he'll be better than Blake Bell. Maybe not as a blocker, but as a receiving option, yeah.
So they've upgraded. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. He was, by the way, a second-round pick, 50th pick. Yeah, but
Vikings, right?
Yeah, Vikings in 2019. But like he, it's funny because he's only 240 pounds. So everybody, I think, believes he's more athletic than he actually is. But like a lot of his testing wasn't as athletic as, I think legend is. His dad was actually more of a bruising tight end, although he was a first-round pick from the Saints in the 90s, which is funny. He only averaged 9 yards a catch in his career, and the last 2 years since his injury in 2021, which held him out the whole year at 7.1 yards a catch, 6.4 yards a catch. He averaged 0.51 yards per route run last year for the Bengals, which is atrocious. The average depth of target for him was 4.9 yards. So he's coming off and 2 drops out of like 26 targets, which is terrible. So I think that like he's really a reclamation project, which is what the Chiefs really like to do. I don't think he's better than Blake. I think he's better than Blake Bell, but I don't know how he fits because he's not a great blocker. I think that he's going to be competing with Noah Gray. And I don't think he's better than Noah Gray to Jeff's point.
Yeah. By the way, he's making 1.1 million. So
yeah, he might just get cut out of training camp. He might not make the team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's a lock. If they have some young guy come and emerge, he's not a lock for this roster. We're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Every single project comes with a written warranty. That's right. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. No commissions, in-house crews. They keep your parking lot safe. Make a great first impression and last impression with clients and customers with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Get your lot striped today. Go to GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. One contractor. All things parking lot. Let's get to the Chris Jones deal. What makes this contract a success, Jeff?
Three-peat. Really, I mean, that's it. I mean, I look at it like you look at the cap numbers after this year, like 41 million, 38 million, 35. It's a huge risk. I mean, that's why I thought he wasn't going to be here, because for them to go to where they went to make this deal work, part of me thinks that you look at what the Raiders gave Christian Wilkins, I have to assume they are eyeballing Chris Jones as a really potential target and free agent to give that kind of money to that the Chiefs gave up. They were talking about giving him $54 million in guaranteed money for 2 years last year and almost doubled it. And so, yeah, I mean, they got to win a championship this year with him. And I think that's why he's here. I think there's no other reason for it except they want to try to run it back again. And I'm not surprised he got paid. I'm surprised they paid it.
Eric, if they're willing to pay him this now, did they really blow it by not paying it to him last year? He would have been a year younger. He'd have been out of the contract quicker. If he's worth it now, we played this game. Do we think that the Chiefs, view him as any more this year than they did last year? We all said no. Very good player, still very good player. But there wasn't anything that we saw like, oh my God, look, he went to another level. We said Chris Jones didn't think of himself as any less. And here they're giving him what appears to be the deal Chris Jones asked for last year.
Yeah. So somebody says the increase in the cap, that helps. I think winning a championship, him playing the year out, doing what it takes, being the cornerstone defensive player. I think a big part of the 2022 season, as we talked about, he never played more than 854 snaps his whole career. He played over 1,100 snaps in 2022. The question was, could he match it in 2023? He largely did. I think that information came in that was different. That, I think he matched some of the stats from 2022, and the cap went up. I also think that not having Brant Tillis there it's a difference. I think that Brant is I don't know if that deal gets done if the front office is the exact same as before, just to be quite frank. So
you're saying he would have been against it?
That's not a deal the Chiefs make usually, right? They've only made that deal for Patrick and even Travis. That's not the deal. Like Travis has never.
Yeah, top of the
market. This is a deal.
He's top of the positional food chain, but we're still talking about less than half.
They held the line on Tyreek Hill. They held the line on Orlando Brown. They held the line. They've held the line before, and they held the line on Chris when Grant was there. Like, I'm not saying again, I'm not trying to say this is a mistake. I'm saying the information that came in to me supported the Jones move, but it's, in my opinion, it's still risky. It's incredibly risky for all the reasons we talked about at the beginning of the show. They're still bottom third in cap space next year. They still have, Creed, Trey, and Nick Bolton, probably leaving, two of those three leaving in free agency next year. They still have Sneed leaving at some point probably, or, him on the books. They hit on 6 players in the 2022 draft. They got to sign those players at some point, and so it all adds up. I think that, again, not having Chris here would be really hard. And there's not a ton of great interior defensive linemen in this draft where they're picking. So I get it, but I'm very torn on it because, again, I think Chris Jones is a cornerstone player on this team, but it's a huge contract.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and Red says you can replace a lot of Sneed's production. Can't replace any of Chris Jones' production.
I think that's a valid point.
Well, you can't replace it immediately.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You can replace anybody. Yeah. And this was his point that I was going to get to. He said, what's the alternative if you don't have Chris Jones? D-line looks pretty mediocre with him gone. When every good player leaves, yes, you have to go replace them. But that is the job. If you ever look at a player short of a quarterback and go, well, how would we live without him? You need to get the hell out of this business as a general manager. It's fine for a fan to look at it that way, but you've got to always have plan B, how it works without that player. Because sometimes it's not that player leaves, it's that player blows his Achilles. That player blows his knee. You're still going to have to line up and play the next Sunday.
The Buffalo Bills were super excited about Von Miller, and now they're like, what do we got here? And he's still costing them a ton of money. And Chris Jones is a lot younger than Von Miller, but these things happen. And we always refer back to the Patriots and how they did business. When they lost Richard Seymour, it was like, what are we going to do? And all of a sudden, Vince Wilfork emerged. Like, lose Tyler, what are we going to do? All of a sudden, they found Asante Samuel and Stephon Gilmore. You're in the business of replacing people. That's what Bill Walsh always said. It's a replacement business. And so, yeah, I understand the decision, and I understand why people are excited about it. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm excited he got paid because he deserved to get paid. And part of me feels like, as much as everybody, I was on the side of Chris Jones last year when he was holding out. This is why he held out. This is why he didn't play that first game, because it was telling the Chiefs, if you want me here, you got to pay me. And so they knew coming this offseason that we got to take him seriously. It's not just going to be, we love you, we want you to be here. We got to pony up some money because last year this guy was willing to miss games to get paid. And so, yeah, Chris Jones played the game as well as he could and really won. And so that really happens with the Chiefs.
Yeah. I do get it. And I do worry that I put up a number of the comments of fans like, hey, this chasing the three-peat, if they don't win this year, is Chris Jones back? Or is that the carrot that's dangling in front of them? Like, okay, normally we were playing the long game on everyone, but now we got a chance at history, so we're going for it. I mean,
I don't think that's what this is, though. I don't think signing Chris Jones is trying to three-peat. I don't. And that's why my answer is a little bit different than Jeff's. I think that the Chris Jones signing is a success if they win one Super Bowl before he retires.
Yeah, because every Super Bowl is precious.
Yeah.
And they're all hard.
But the point is he's making it harder with the contract he signed.
Of course.
So he hasn't made it easier.
Of course, but Chris is I get it. I do, but Chris is a Hall of Fame player, right? Like he is a well, let's put it there. Like in the Mount Rushmore of Kansas City Chiefs, it is Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Thomas, And
Tony Gonzalez is in there.
No, there's Tony Gonzalez, there's Hank Stram, there's Len Dawson.
Yeah.
I mean, limiting
Chris
Lanier.
Jones is in the conversation, right?
Of course he is. Of course he is. And listen,
Yeah.
the way I put it is, I wouldn't have done this. I'd have traded him for whatever I could get.
Last year, of course.
But he's here last year, this year. Oh, well, this year he couldn't. I mean, but yes, I would have traded him to make sure I got something back for him.
But
But
agreed.
because he's here, I love it. I love the guy, the player. I love his personality. I love when he's on, and I don't think anybody can weigh 300 pounds or close to it and be on every snap. So, yes, he takes some plays off. So does everybody who's that big on the NFL. But hang on, I want to say this. So I will root for him, and it's great because he's here. But it is going to be a legitimate question as to whether or not this was the right move.
Yep. I think Jeff's 100% correct in that, and you are too. I think if we come up and they don't win look, the Patriots went 10 straight years without winning the Super Bowl in the middle of a dynasty. If the Chiefs have the same fate, we are going to look back, and the most likely, if we do the pre-mortem on this thing, Chris Jones's contract is the number one culprit, right?
Well,
100%.
Yeah. And the lesson they should have learned from the run it back year was just because you want to win doesn't mean you're going to win.
Right.
Just because Chris Jones is back, it guarantees you nothing.
Right.
The
And your
Bengals have Joe
chances
Burrow back. Aaron Rodgers is healthy. The Texans are a better team. The Chargers are a better coach. There's all kinds of new challenges come with this. And so I think the idea, people forget this was the third seed. They won a championship as the third seed in the AFC. It wasn't like this was like 2020 when you're walking in with everybody you had and you're like, we're super talented. This team still has a lot of work to do.
This was the 2018. Yeah. This was the 2018 Pats. This was not the best team in football.
Yeah. And Eric, you've pointed out when he hasn't played, his value to the point spread is what? A half a point?
Which is a lot.
It's a lot, but it's a half a freaking point, people.
Yeah. I mean, right. And I think that, again, I think that the thing about Chris Jones I'm coming, look, I was the one that said trade him last year. I was the biggest one, and I still think trading him would have been a smart choice last year. I think, though, that with new information, again, it doesn't necessarily change my mind completely, but Chris is a different player than he was even 3 years ago.
I will leave this topic with this one. Shane says, Chris has shown how much money motivates him. That's worrisome now that he got paid. I will say that he got paid in 19 or at the end of 19, and he continued to get in better and better shape. The question is, does he bring it on every snap, right? He'll work the offseason because I think he's one of those guys that the workout bug has hit him. He's one of those guys that stands at the podium rubbing the bicep and everyone's got their friend that's jacked, Jeff, but Jeff doesn't do this. But you got friends that are, and they're always giving you the oh, I'm just kind of stretching. Oh, check out my guns. Look at my veins. Chris has got a little bit of that in him. So I think that he's, been bitten by the workout bug. So he is going to be in shape. I really don't worry about that. But does he feel like I got to come with my hair on fire on every snap that I can? That I worry. I don't say it won't happen. I worry about it. I think it's a fair concern. All right, let's talk about Willie Gay. 1 year up to, I can't get what even's guaranteed on this deal. Yeah. 1 year, Jeff, up to $5 million with the Saints. Surprised at how low his deal was?
I was. And part of me says the Chiefs must have said, okay, bye. We're not even talking to you. Now, once Drew Tranquil signed his deal, I'm sure that changed whatever interest Willie Gay had in being here. Because if a guy signs that kind of deal just walking in the door and you're getting a lot less, you're not so excited about being in Kansas City anymore. And I know that he is from the South. He's from Mississippi, which is probably not that, wherever he grew up is not that far from New Orleans probably. So there may be some value there. But I thought he would get a lot better than that. I thought he'd get at least some kind of a multi-year offer opportunity. So like Eric said about the marketplace, it tells you what you are. And right now, Willie Gay is probably considered a fast guy. He probably doesn't do a whole lot for teams at that position.
Erica, you got to be surprised at this deal. Eric?
It reminds me a little bit of McCole Hardman.
In what way?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of McCole Hardman. I think I kind of expected McCole Hardman to get, you know, 10 million-ish a year as a second round pick who has some traits. And I expected Willie Gay to kind of have that same deal. I mean, you know, he has traits. Our scouts at Sumer really like him. I thought that he would get, some sort of deal. Now, I think that there are questions about his durability. I think there are questions about his, whether or not if he gets paid, if he'll stay in shape. Like, I think there are all of those questions. But no, I'm surprised. And I think part of it, and we've also seen this with the front office of the Chiefs at times, I do think that people coming out of Kansas City are underrated and maybe understandably so because of Patrick and Andy. I think people believe that the Chiefs are a product of Patrick and Andy to an extent. And people that come out of, Juju, right? Juju went for a lot less than we thought on this show. I think people come out of here a lot less than we think, because I think the marketplace believes that this team can make a lot of Jags look like useful players.
I think that's a fair point. I will say this: the Chiefs are definitely known as a team that coaches well. So if you're not reaching your potential here, why would you think you're gonna on my team, right? If you can't get it done with the Chiefs, and I think let's also bring up Willie Gay was 72nd of 82 linebackers on the PFF grades. I don't know what he was on the Sumer ones, but his off the field is real too.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about a player who threw, I don't know where he threw it, but it's not a good situation, right? That was an ugly situation for him. I've also heard him openly talk to his credit and seek help, but talk about mental health. And so, but I'm still surprised. The eye test says this guy can ball out. And I always wonder why his grade seems so low, because I do see him make plays. And I will say this to tie it in with the Chris Jones. This year, Chris Jones isn't that much, but in years coming forward, I mean, the Drew Tranquill deal, if you gave that to Tranquill and one to Willie Gay and kept your depth there, and you're signing just an average guy at D-line, but you're keeping your overall depth. If you signed another Charles Omenihu, kept Willie Gay, and Drew Tranquill, are you a better defense in the long run? I mean, I don't know. Defense, Eric is the one who taught me 0 holes. That's what you want. And it gets harder to have 0 holes when you got a huge chunk on Chris Jones. And so Willie Gay helped give them depth. Leo Chenal now becomes a starter in the base unit. So I think it is going to be interesting. Who's the biggest challenge? Who's the biggest threat? The Chiefs right now. Jeff, do you have anyone that you think is maybe making gains on them?
Well, the Ravens to me are still in there, but I like what the Bengals did. I thought they made some smart moves in free agency, but if I had to pick one, I'll go Ravens. I think adding Derrick Henry reaffirms their need to run the football. I think he will create some opportunities for them if he's able to stay healthy. They get Keaton Mitchell back. They still have, I think, Justice Hill is in the mix there, and they'll probably draft another guy, but I think that they will continue to get better and they'll continue to add pieces. They're very committed. John Harbaugh said this at the combine. They're very committed to that offense and trying to make it all it can be with Lamar. And so they feel like they took baby steps last year. And so getting Derrick Henry this year is, I don't think he's going to be Derrick Henry of old, but he's still 6'3" and 245 pounds and a load.
Yeah. Eric, who's gaining, if anybody?
Well, I think Houston's they have the formula, right? They have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They have a coach who I think has a clue, and D'Amico Ryan's a good young guy that really has the ear of his players. Bobby Slowick, my former colleague at PFF, is kind of following the Ben Johnson, where he stays after one good year as a coordinator, he stays on as a coordinator again. That's helpful. Rookie, a lot of times the sophomore slump for a quarterback is really just, did my coordinator get a head coaching job, right? And he stays, so that's good for Stroud. They get Joe Mixon in the fold to be the running back. I think that's an upgrade over Singletary. They got Azeez Al-Shire to play linebacker, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the whole league. They get Donnell Hunter from Minnesota, who's still can bring it, had 16.5 sacks, a career high last year. And I think Houston's got the goods. They also play in a division where, I think Shane Steichen really coaches the Colts well, but you got questions about Anthony Richardson after 1 year. The Jags are, I think, underneath the covers are imploding a little bit, and the Titans, I think, are rebuilding with Brian Callahan at coach. So to me, I think Houston, if I had to place a bet, I think Houston's going to Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely candidate, and you hit upon it. But the rookie contract quarterback is always such a huge part of it. What's the biggest need right now? We'll close with this. What do you think, Jeff? Is it left tackle? Is it that easy, or is it depth somewhere else? Is there something bigger picture?
I think we'd all say left tackle. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, it's Wande Morris, and it's whoever they sign in free agency. Whoever's left from the. I don't think it's going to be a David Bakhtiari. I don't think it's going to be him because he's so beat up. But Donovan Smith is still out there. Trent Brown just went to the Bengals. But it's a mystery. I'm not so sold on them being able to land somebody in the first round of the draft who can come in and play right away, just because I think there's going to be a lot more of a run on that position than there will be for receivers. But I mean, look, they've made it work. They've won championships with Orlando Brown and Donovan Smith, so it's not like it's a huge concern, but it's a mystery right now at the most important position on your offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I think a veteran's coming. I think they'll look long and hard at drafting one even after they sign a veteran. Is left tackle the biggest spot, Eric, or is there another one? Is there a second biggest? That's a big screaming problem in your mind?
Yeah, left tackle's the one. I think there's going to be some guys available to them, hopefully at 32. I think that same thing as last year. If they don't get a guy they like in the draft, they'll go and find somebody. Donovan Smith could even be that guy again in free agency in May. I think that the second most important, or the second biggest need to me, is the other defensive tackle spot. They brought back Derek Nottie. Derek Nottie's like post where they have like those three. That's the coolest thing, by the way. Whoever runs the Chiefs social account, good on you. They have those those three little every like re-signing, or every time a guy leaves, they say thank you. They have one of those Lombardis for every time they've won one. Derek Nottie having three feels like the kid who is in the group project that didn't do any work. I feel like they need to get a nose tackle on this team that really can move the pile a little bit. That's not Mike Pennell. So that's the one in a defensive tackle class that I think is pretty solid. They need to get that a defensive tackle in.
I'm thinking about left tackle too. Is that position really affects what Marquise Brown becomes in this offense, because you ain't throwing the ball deep, you ain't protecting the quarterback long enough.
Yeah, and it should be pointed out Mike Pennell is back as well. So there is more help there at the defensive tackle. All right, that's going to do it for us. Remember, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. Why would you call anyone else? 30 years, the best in the business. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Super Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.